He knew hunger could make people act strangely, while someone hurried him to eat before school time slipped away. The blonde boy grumbled that breakfast was way too much, but the girl insisted it was perfectly balanced. Chitose stared at the spread, murmured that it was making her hungry too, and after getting his permission, she crept closer with an excuse that already felt risky. Before he could process anything, Chitose all of a sudden crowded into his space and startled him so badly that her name flew out of his mouth. When he managed a weak protest, Chitose pulled back just enough and made it clear she intended to get what she wanted. Staying close, Chitose teased over whether he only wanted to help her or solve his own problem too, and his panic spiked because one crisis was already enough. Then Chitose lowered her face near his shoulder, and he froze at the table, completely overwhelmed. A beat later, Chitose cheerfully thanked him for the meal, while he snapped that she should not be saying it like that, and she brushed it off as something she simply could not resist. Smiling in complete satisfaction, Chitose declared that she was totally full and that it had been delicious. Left red-faced and rattled, he could only listen as Chitose bluntly said his blood tasted really good. Still shaky from losing blood first thing in the morning, the boy complained, and Chitose calmly offered to cook him delicious meals every day in return. Sweating in disbelief, he bitterly wondered if that made him nothing but a food source, while Chitose pouted and asked if he really hated letting her drink his blood when she genuinely liked the food too. When he reacted in shock, Chitose bluntly said that as long as it came from a person, anything would work, then casually suggested getting closer, leaving him speechless. Chitose quickly corrected herself that blood alone was enough, then smiled and explained that vampires like her had become extremely rare, which only deepened his confusion. The narration explained that long ago vampires had been natural enemies of humans who attacked to drink blood. But as their numbers fell and their existence faded from memory, the church began sending priests to watch over and manage them. Under that system, one priest was assigned to each vampire as the standard rule. The two of them were the result of that arrangement, a vampire who no longer felt like attacking humans, and a priest in training who hardly looked suited for the clergy at all. With time, those formal roles had faded, and they had simply become childhood friends, though Chitose still watched him closely as he rubbed his head in embarrassment. Chitose noticed he had forgotten his cross again and moved to put it back on him, while he winced and thought a vampire really should not be touching a cross at all. As they left the church together, the routine of the morning made their strange bond almost look normal. On the way to school, Chitose pressed Santa to show her his homework, but he flatly reminded her that he had already refused more than once, leaving her to promise she would teach him later instead. Chitose quietly admitted that she still wanted blood, though not enough to attack anyone, and she took comfort in how calmly Santa helped her, thinking that this was simply what modern vampires had become. She then revealed that she had not seen another vampire like herself in years, and the loneliness in that hit much harder than expected. At school, a new transfer student introduced herself to the class as Jiruji, instantly pulling every eye in the room toward her. Jiruji greeted the class with a bright, confident smile and stood out the moment she appeared. The girls swarmed Jiruji with excited questions and praise, while Chitose froze the instant she saw her. Chitose realized, with a jolt, that the cheerful new girl was actually a vampire. Outside the classroom, someone checked on Santa and Chitose while the school bell rang and the tension quietly tightened. In front of the class, the teacher cheerfully announced that another vampire would be joining them today and assured everyone that the girl was mischievous but good at heart. Santa looked at the message with immediate irritation as Chitose, clearly unsettled, asked him to keep an eye on the new girl. Santa read a message praising Chitose as a model vampire because she did not attack people or cause trouble, and Chitose lit up at the compliment. The message went on to say it was finally time for Santa to begin his next training as a priest in training, while also urging the three of them to get along, which made him click his tongue in annoyance. Seeing a photo of the new girl posing brightly with a Bible, Santa right away suspected her new role would be a headache and judged her to be trouble by nature. Chitose quickly moved closer and objected to him, saying that, while Santa awkwardly tried to soften what he meant. Before the moment could settle, Jiruji all of a sudden appeared with a cheerful grin and casually asked what they were doing, leaving Chitose visibly shaken. When they fumbled for an answer, Jiruji played innocent and then all of a sudden offered Chitose a piece of candy, confusing both her and Santa. Chitose accepted it with a blush, and Jiruji boldly declared that Chitose would be under her care now, while Santa could only react with weary unease. As the school building came into view, Santa firmly warned her to behave at school. Jiruji latched onto his arm and lightly promised she would not cause trouble, repeating his warning back to him. Once inside the classroom, Santa asked whether she had remembered to apply for blood packs, and she nervously insisted that she had, though even she did not sound convincing. Chitose tried to reassure herself that if there really were other vampires besides her, then maybe they could still get along. Jiruji instantly read Chitose's face as obvious jealousy and bluntly called her out for glaring like she wanted Santa to stop fussing over her. Santa shot back with an offended look and insisted through his reaction that he was doing no such thing. Flustered and embarrassed, Chitose all of a sudden asked whether she might actually be jealous, throwing Santa completely off balance. As the teasing kept piling up, she nervously brought up the rumors that she and Santa lived together and wondered whether that basically made them a couple, even if they called themselves childhood friends. Left alone with her thoughts, Chitose repeated that Santa was only a childhood friend with appealing blood, and even Santa had said as much. Staring out over the town, she firmly denied being jealous, yet her thoughts kept circling the fear of someone taking Santa away from her. Realizing how late it had gotten, Chitose abruptly shoved those feelings aside and rushed off to get home and make dinner. Later, she walked back through the school hallway in silence, still weighed down by everything racing through her mind. When Chitose peeked into the classroom and found it empty, her eyes widened as a bad feeling struck. Chitose stepped into the empty classroom and found Jiruji holding on to Santa in a way that made her stop cold. Her face went blank in shock as jealousy and dread hit at once. Seeing Jiruji pressed close to Santa, Chitose felt as if her worst fear had taken shape right in front of her. Her eye twitched as she remembered one of the dishes she had prepared for him, and the realization cut even deeper. She thought of the Cobb salad, and the scene grows awkward with no easy escape. She remembered the rest of the meal too, from bacon-wrapped asparagus and grilled mackerel to omelette, quiche, and pork miso soup, and the weight in her chest only grew. Chitose bitterly realized that while she cooked for Santa, Jiruji was taking his attention right in front of her. Unable to endure it, she turned and ran down the hallway with her emotions spinning out of control. As she fled, she tried to tell herself that none of this was wrong. Chitose reminded herself that vampires could only drink from approved blood packs, or from the person assigned to watch over them, and she went quiet beneath that cruel truth. Chitose drifted down the hall in a daze as someone told her that Jiruji-san was to the right and asked if she was all right. She turned that way and noticed Jiruji hurrying after her, clearly trying to catch her before she disappeared. Jiruji called out to her and realized that Santa-kun had not even noticed Chitose leaving. When Chitose silently faced her, Jiruji nervously asked if she had seen what happened and apologized for not asking sooner. Jiruji directly asked whether Chitose had feelings for Santa-kun. Flustered and defensive, Chitose tried to deny it and insisted that humans were only food to vampires. Jiruji accepted that answer with a tired nod and said she understood. Chitose felt relieved when Jiruji explained that she had been worried about what to do if the two of them were actually a couple. Jiruji then brightened and suggested that they get along and share instead. Hearing that, Chitose froze in confusion, then found herself disarmed by Jiruji's unexpectedly innocent smile. Chitose returned home telling herself she was being narrow-minded, but the thought barely calmed her at all. At dinner, she apologized for being late, but the blonde boy had already prepared food and gently said she did not need to force herself since he was the one eating. As Chitose stood there confused, he quietly reached for her arm and studied her face with concern. He realized she had not had any blood since that morning and moved to help her before it got worse. Chitose hesitantly accepted with a strained thanks, but the closeness shook her instantly and sent her emotions surging again. Unable to handle it, she quickly pulled away, thanked him again, and admitted she needed some space instead. Left alone with the night, Chitose found herself cornered by the unsettling question of whether what she felt was jealousy. Sitting on the roof, she replayed everything and nervously started asking herself if she really was jealous. Then the truth closed in, and she realized that out of all humans, she might actually like him. Chitose broke down in flustered denial, agonizing that after 16 years together she was only realizing it now, and the embarrassment became unbearable. Suta found Chitose on the roof, and she awkwardly repeated his earlier advice that when something was wrong, a vampire should climb somewhere high and lean against the cross. Seeing how shaken she was, Suta asked what was wrong and pointed out that she had not drunk any blood and had been acting strange all day. Chitose all of a sudden grabbed onto him, overwhelmed by her feelings, while he panicked at her surprising strength and unstable mood. In the silence of the night, Chitose admitted to herself that she felt like a terrible person. Sitting back to back with Suta, Chitose confessed that even though vampires were supposed to share blood, seeing Jiruji rely on him had filled her with painful jealousy. Suta realized she had seen that moment, but he quickly tried to reassure her that it was fine and that helping each other was simply the rule. Chitose admitted that she understood the logic, but she could not stop wanting to keep him to herself and wanted him to stay by her side alone. Flushed and determined, Chitose declared that she would not rely on anyone but Sauta, and he echoed that no one else mattered to him either. Chitose pushed it further and insisted that from now on, it would be only him. Sauta nervously asked if she really meant that, and Chitose firmly said yes, adding that Jiruji would just have to make do with blood packs instead. Chitose apologized for being selfish, and Suta gently reminded her that they had known each other for a long time, which eased some of the tightness in her chest. Blushing hard, Chitose agreed with him and looked relieved that he understood how she felt. After finally getting it all off her chest, Chitose admitted that her hunger had all of a sudden returned, catching Suta's attention. Chitose moved closer and directly asked if she could have some of his blood after all, leaving Suta startled. Suta awkwardly called her a glutton, while Chitose stayed close and silently waited for his answer. Flushed and nervous, Chitose then asked if this time they could handle it in a different way instead, which stunned Suta even more. Though shaken by how close she was, Suta hesitantly agreed, and the two leaned in with obvious embarrassment. They shared a brief, awkward moment, and the situation instantly turned intense and emotionally overwhelming for Chitose. Suta pulled back in confusion and asked what was wrong, but Chitose froze and could not answer. Before he could react, Chitose all of a sudden lunged at him and knocked him onto the rooftop, overwhelming him with that impulsive move. Chitose reeled from the taste and realized Suta's blood was unbelievably different, shocking her and stirring an urge she could not suppress. Hovering over him, Chitose felt that flavor was nothing like usual, so intense it made her mind go numb, while Suta stared up at her in confusion. Overwhelmed by that rush, Chitose admitted to herself that she wanted more. Suta tried to make sense of it and wondered if the awkward closeness had changed something, even though he knew that should not affect how a vampire tasted blood. As Chitose's thoughts raced, one explanation forced its way to the surface. She all of a sudden remembered Jiruji announcing that she had been told to start living at the church from that very day. Snapping back, Suta reacted angrily that no one had told him, while Chitose stood tense behind him. Suta, right away, objected that living together was impossible, but Chitose abruptly stopped him and told him to wait. Flustered but resolved, Chitose said she felt sorry for Jiruji and suggested letting her stay with them, leaving Suta stunned. Chitose awkwardly argued that monopolizing Suta's blood would be wrong and that Jiruji should be allowed to drink it too, which left him completely baffled after what she had said before. Jiruji hesitantly agreed after Chitose insisted, though uncertainty still showed on her face. Chitose realized there was only one strange factor behind why Suta's blood had tasted so overwhelmingly strong. She concluded that it was because Jiruji had drunk Suta's blood before she did. Chitose admitted she wanted Suta to herself and did not want to give him to anyone else, even though she knew that was not how things should be. As Jiruji cheerfully said she would be in their care, Suta answered weakly, while Chitose stood behind them in conflicted silence. Watching them, Chitose could only ask herself why her emotions were spiraling this far out of control. Suta and Jiruji turned to her in alarm, and Suta nervously asked if Chitose was all right. Flushed and shaken, Chitose could not forget how intense that moment had felt, and the memory only deepened her confusion. Her thoughts drifted through feelings she still could not put into words. But one truth finally became impossible for Chitose to deny, and it was that she had fallen for Suta. While cooking, Chitose admitted to herself that even if she refused to accept it, falling for Suta after 16 years as childhood friends felt painfully embarrassing. Her mind flashed back to the overwhelming taste of Suta's blood, and she could not understand why nothing in all those years had ever shaken her this much before. Blushing fiercely, Chitose realized she wanted to taste it again. Even when Suta called out to her, Chitose stayed lost in thought and desperately searched for a way to make that happen. As she absent-mindedly kept making far too much food, Suta pointed out she was overdoing it and added that he still appreciated the effort, making her snap back and apologize. Seeing how distracted she was, Suta told Chitose that she had been acting strange lately, and she could only go quiet. When Suta leaned in and asked if she was even listening, Chitose jolted in embarrassment and hurriedly insisted that she was. Suta warned her not to space out in front of a fire, and Chitose meekly apologized again. Then, a girl off to the side casually mentioned that there was barely any shampoo left, making both Suta and Chitose turn at once. They were stunned to see Jiruji standing there fresh from a bath, and the sudden sight left both of them flustered as she calmly waited for an answer. Chitose all of a sudden threw herself at Suta in a flustered panic and clung to him, leaving them both wide-eyed and embarrassed. Outside the church, Suta sternly told Jiruji to wear proper clothes, while she rushed it off and teased that clergymen were too uptight, and he insisted that was not the point. As they headed out, a nun named Alicia noticed the commotion, and Chitose quickly apologized to her for the noise. Alicia quietly decided that if Santa had chosen to live with them, then there was nothing more to say. Revealed as Sister Alicia, the nun watched with displeasure and bitterly remarked that he was now living with two troublesome vampires. Chitose hurried after her and apologetically admitted that this arrangement had happened because of her own request. While walking beside Suta, Chitose called to him and directly asked why he had let Jiruji stay with them. Chitose accused him of saying that after staring at Jiruji earlier during that awkward moment, and Suta recoiled in panic as she cornered him with a jealous glare. Suta defended himself by saying Jiruji had come to an unfamiliar place, and he felt it had to be hard for her. Chitose right away called that excuse a lie and argued that, as a priest in training, he would say he had to help anyone in need. Chitose secretly admitted that she wanted to test that suspicion, and her flustered face showed how serious and unsettled she was. She remembered Jiruji feeding from Suta and realizing it had the same effect as before, which made her want to confirm the truth herself. Jiruji casually asked when she could drink Sauda's blood again, catching the others off guard with how openly she said it. Chitose right away shut it down and declared that for now, both of them would have to endure using only blood packs. Even while enforcing that rule, Chitose quietly admitted that fresh blood was still better, exposing the conflict she was hiding. She then forced a smile and suggested making today a break from blood altogether, as if there were no other option. Jiruji clicked her tongue and pointed out that with 2 vampires relying on him, Suta could collapse if they took too much. Watching them walk ahead, Chitose resigned herself to holding back and told herself that was exactly why she had to endure it. The church bell rang out, underscoring the tense silence hanging over her choice. Left alone with her craving, Jiruji bluntly wondered if she should attack somebody, then stopped as the dangerous thought lingered. Jiruji all of a sudden leaned in close behind Suta and caught him off guard, leaving him visibly shaken by her boldness. When Suta called out to Jiruji in confusion, she calmly revealed that she was a vampire and told him to keep it secret from everyone. In a private corner, Jiruji closed in and warned that asking anyone else for help would be pointless, while Suta froze at how direct she was. Later, Jiruji cheerfully demonstrated what she meant, but Chitose blushed and protested that she absolutely could not do something like that, while Suta begged for a break. Jiruji brushed it off as a joke, acting playful even as the tension she stirred refused to fade. Jiruji then asked Chitose if she ever secretly fed on other boys, and Chitose instantly denied it with flustered force. Chitose warned Ji to be careful because Suta was the only one unusually tolerant due to the church, and Suta tried to stop her from saying too much. Suta awkwardly added that things were not usually this loose there, and that students normally could not even come to the school, leaving Jiruji surprised and Chitose doubtful. Jiruji reasoned that this was probably because Chitose was so serious, noting that Chitose was even enduring blood bags exactly as she had promised. Hearing that, Chitose quietly wondered whether she really was that serious, and Jiruji right away answered that she definitely was. Watching the other girls laugh from outside, Chitose stood alone and felt the distance between herself and everyone else. Chitose lowered her gaze, then decided that for Suta and Jiruji's sake, she had to explain the harsh reality they were overlooking. She said that if she had to compare it to something, vampires and priests were like prisoners and jailers. In her mind, and the discomfort of the scene becomes impossible to ignore. Chitose explained that priests were always watching over vampires, and because of that control, even the priests themselves could not live freely. Jiruji pointed out that Chitose never even tried to disobey and teased her for acting like a perfect prisoner, which only made Chitose more embarrassed. Jiruji pressed further, saying that being a model prisoner would not lighten her burden, and that stubborn seriousness would gain her nothing. Leaning over Chitose's desk, Jiruji declared that the 2 of them would always be vampires, forcing Chitose to face that truth head-on. Sitting alone outside later, Chitose quietly admitted to herself that Jiruji was right. As Chitose sat deep in thought on the ledge, someone quietly opened the door behind her and came closer. Chitose noticed Suta approaching from behind and quietly asked him whether he thought she was too serious. Sauda told her that being serious was perfectly fine, and Chitose hesitantly asked if he really meant it. Chitose admitted she had never thought of seriousness as something people would praise, revealing her uncertainty. Suta moved closer and offered himself to her, catching Chitose off guard. Sauda explained that she had been forcing herself lately and said it would be hard for her to drink in front of Jiruji, so if she did it now, no one would know. Still stunned, Chitose heard Suta call her a serious and model vampire, and she wondered if that could truly be a good thing. Flustered, Sauda added that her behavior really helped him, trying to express himself honestly. As Suta awkwardly thanked her, Chitose was struck again by how kind he always was. Sitting beside him, Chitose wondered whether Suta would be shocked if she confessed that she liked him. Chitose then decided that if being serious could help Suta, maybe that part of herself was not so bad after all. Startled by what was happening, Suta froze in embarrassment, while Chitose quietly said they should begin. Chitose leaned on Suta and thanked him for the meal after taking some of his blood, while both of them looked flustered by the closeness. When Suta nervously called Chitose's name, she stayed silent and pulled back slightly, as if she had just noticed something was wrong. Chitose paused without answering, and the brief silence only made Suta more uneasy. Chitose all of a sudden apologized and said she did not want any blood right now, shutting the moment down despite her earlier resolve. Standing apart from him again, Chitose thanked Suta for the thought, but admitted the taste felt different from before. As Suta remained kind, Chitose walked away thinking that after only one taste, she had already realized something had changed. Looking out at the school building, Chitose blamed herself and bitterly concluded that she was the worst. Sauda hurried down the hallway, worried because Chitose had been acting strange that day. Reaching a door, Sauda corrected himself and realized her strange behavior had not started today but had been going on for a while. In the empty hallway, a girl cornered Suta with a smug blush, turning his search for Chitose all of a sudden dangerous. She pressed close and accused Suta of letting Chitose drink his blood, while his shaken denial came far too late to sound believable. Pouting, she complained that she had been told to endure it, and bitterly wondered if Chitose was simply special to him, leaving Suta tense and speechless. As Suta broke into a nervous sweat, she bluntly declared that Chitose would not be coming. With no one else around in the classroom, she warned that calling for help would be pointless, tightening the pressure on Suta as she kept him trapped. Elsewhere, Mio Sakurazawa casually thought about dinner and counted the day as over, then stopped when she noticed Santa was nowhere in sight. Mio turned back in silence and wondered if he had already gone home without her realizing it. After a brief pause by the window, Mio decided to move, sensing that something about Suta's disappearance was off. She slid open a classroom door and stepped into the bright hallway, her expression sharpening as she searched for him. From the doorway, Mio finally spotted Suta inside with the other girl pressed against him, and the sight instantly made the whole situation suspicious. Mio found Suta trapped in an awkward situation beneath the girl, and her blank stare made the whole room freeze as panic hit them both. She walked straight toward them through the classroom, and that silent approach only locked the pair in place. A heavy, unsettling pressure gathered around her as Mio stared them down and let out a low breath that made the air feel tighter. The blonde girl shrank back in embarrassment and nervously asked if this was really okay, clearly shaken by Mio's sudden arrival. Mio said it was, then calmly revealed that Suta had already let her drink his blood before, turning the entire accusation around. She called it unfair otherwise and said Jiduti-san should get some too, reducing the clash to a blunt question of sharing. Chitose instantly apologized for the harsh things she had said and admitted she had been the one benefiting all along, her anger collapsing into guilt. Mio smiled and said she did not mind, accepting the apology so easily that the mood shifted at once. Relieved, Chitose thanked Mio and hurried off to find Suta, unaware he was still right there and completely overwhelmed. Then, a hand holding an egg entered view, and the narration hinted that the real truth was only beginning to emerge. Watching Suta with Chitose in the background, Mio admitted she hated seeing them together so much she could barely endure it. Even so, Mio tried to tell herself it was fine, as if all those buried feelings were all of a sudden breaking loose. Driven by that jealousy, Mio all of a sudden threw herself against Suta, stunning him as Chitose stared in shock. Clinging to him in the classroom, Mio ignored Suta's flustered protest, while Chitose hesitated and called out to him in confusion. Mio refused to stop, deciding that even this still would not be enough to contain what she was feeling. She confessed that the serious, dependable image everyone saw was only a role, exposing a far more impulsive side underneath. Overwhelmed by the taste, Mio reacted with near wild intensity and wondered why it affected her this strongly. Sauda panicked and asked what was happening, while it was revealed that his condition had changed after another vampire had already fed on him, making him unusually special. Realizing Mio was still reacting, Suta urgently called her name and tried to pull her back, and she answered him at once. The moment becomes overwhelming and emotionally difficult. Mio trembled as she admitted she wanted Suta to herself and did not want to hand him over to anyone else. Thinking it through, Mio realized she wanted to drink Suta's blood because the thought of another vampire reaching him first was unbearable. Sauda hesitantly called out to Chitose as Mio fell silent, trapped inside her own overwhelming thoughts. Then Mio all of a sudden panicked and realized she had made herself sound dangerously fixated, leaving Suta and Chitose staring at her in alarm. Trying to recover, Mio asked what was wrong with Suta and pointed out that he had been acting strange lately, while Chitose quietly urged them to go home first. As they walked outside, Mio turned to Chitose and directly asked if she and Suta were really just childhood friends. Chitose answered with a teasing smile and said she might just steal Suta away herself, instantly deepening Mio's unease. Chitose pushed even further and joked that Mio would have to wait until Chitose was done with Suta before getting her turn, leaving Mio speechless. Chitose brushed it off as a joke and insisted she would not interfere, but the playful smile on her face only made her seem even more suspicious. Mio stared back with a flustered, unnatural smile and asked why Chitose was smiling at all, as the tension between them sharpened. A blonde young man agreed they should celebrate Chiduchi-san moving in, and the moment takes an uncomfortable turn. Everyone gathered in the room and toasted the move together with an excited cheer. A cheerful blonde woman took a sip and right away reacted that it tasted unbelievably good. Curious about her reaction, the blonde young man asked what she had noticed, and she stared at the drink in surprise. Mio was shaken as she realized that after seeing Santa, she had lost control once Jiruji-san drank his blood, exposing a side of herself she had never understood. Flustered and sweating, Mio bitterly concluded that she was the kind of person who could even imagine him being taken by other vampires. Seeing the label, Mio realized it was ripened blood and panicked because she absolutely could not let Santa learn that. The blonde woman proudly explained that it was high-class ripened blood aged for 30 years and praised how delicious it was. Startled, the blonde young man asked if blood could really ripen, while another girl quietly wondered about that taste. The blonde woman casually added that aging was not the only thing that affected flavor and that circumstances could change it too, making everyone listen closer. She explained that, for vampires, blood and other sources could both serve as nourishment, and that their flavor could shift depending on the situation. Laughing freely, she went even further and said that, like romance, the chemistry between people could affect that taste too. Chitose snapped at her and shut the topic down right away, insisting it had become far too personal. Hearing all of that, Mio spiraled inward and painfully concluded that she was the truly strange one. The blonde woman noticed Chitose's dark expression and cheerfully asked what was wrong. Chitose leaned in, urged her to try the drink, and revealed that she had gotten it through a secret route, leaving Mio flustered and alarmed. Nervous and sweating, Mio hesitated with the glass and told herself it was fine, even though she clearly did not believe it. As she drank, Mio's thoughts rushed together at once, from her childhood bond with Santa to the changing taste of blood, her studies, the church watching over them, and the feelings she had been trying to deny. The drink hit hard, and Mio started to look overwhelmed as her thoughts blurred together under the alcohol. Growing flushed and unsteady, Mio forced a bright smile and tried to tell herself that maybe everything would somehow be okay. The others right away panicked and pressed Jiruji over whether the drink had really come from a church-approved source, while she casually acted unsure. Chitose scolded Jiruji for being completely irresponsible, and the mood turned sharply tense. Jiruji brushed it off, said she was fine, and defended her flashy clothes, which only unsettled Sister even more. Sister tried to lecture her, but also admitted she kept eating far too much of Chitose's cooking because it was too delicious to resist. Watching the church grow strangely lively, Mio nervously noted that Jiruji was too cheerful and dressed in ways she felt she was not supposed to be seeing. Flushed from the alcohol, Mio agreed and drunkenly added that Jiruji seemed oddly careless, showing how badly her restraint was slipping. Suta froze in embarrassment, then hurried over to steady Mio when she wobbled, leaving her confused and startled by the sudden contact. Jiruji instantly protested that Suta was looking at her while she was dressed more boldly than Sister, and Sister shot back that she should have dressed properly in the first place. As the loud argument dragged on, the church stood quietly beneath the night sky. Later, Jiruji hummed as she walked away with food, while Sister stayed behind with the bottle and gloomily admitted she had eaten far too much. Chitose leaned against Suta with a flushed smile and thanked him for doing the dishes, leaving him startled as she cheerfully reminded him that he already cooked for her. As they moved through the kitchen, Suta told Chitose she was leaning on him too much because of the alcohol, but she only laughed and said staying close made washing dishes harder. Suta noticed that whenever Chitose was in a good mood, she let out that soft little laugh, and she shyly asked if that was really true. He said he was glad she seemed to be having fun, then gently brought up how strangely she had been acting lately, and how she had not really wanted to drink blood. Suta admitted he had started to think the issue from before might still be bothering her. Chitose recalled Jiruji's claim that vampires and priests lived like prisoners and jailers, and the comment still weighed heavily on her. She quietly wondered whether that idea had been troubling Santa too. Chitose insisted it was true that she was not free, explaining that she was only allowed to travel between the church and school. Even so, she stayed close to Suta and admitted that she liked this life and liked being with him, making the moment ache even more. Chitose remained beside Suta as she confessed her feelings about her constrained life and the happiness she still found with him. Suta blushed and told Chitose that if anything was troubling her, she could tell him. Chitose looked at him and admitted to herself that his kindness was exactly why she loved him. As she stayed near him, Chitose condemned herself for being shaken by another vampire drinking Suta's blood and felt she was betraying him. Then Chitose all of a sudden caught the scent of another vampire and froze in alarm. She right away asked whether Jiruji had been there earlier, and Suta awkwardly confirmed that she had. Flustered, Suta explained that Jiruji preferred blood while it was still fresh. Chitose went red and tense as Suta noticed something was wrong, while she desperately told herself she had to endure it. Barely holding herself together, Chitose kept urging herself to endure no matter what. To the rising embarrassment, Chitose reminded herself that she loved Suta and that he always took such good care of her. Overwhelmed and dizzy, Chitose told herself to stop these shameful thoughts as Suta noticed how strange she seemed. Flushed and struggling with jealousy, Chitose complained that it was unfair if only Jiruji was allowed and asked if she could drink from Suta too. Suta flusteredly agreed and apologized, admitting he had handled it unfairly, which left Chitose startled. Chitose guided Suta over to sit down in a kitchen and checked that it was really okay before moving closer. As she drank from him, Chitose told Suta to stay still and silently condemned herself as the worst for giving in. Staying close to Suda, Chitose was overwhelmed by guilt and kept thinking she was the worst, even as she continued drinking his blood. Suda gently told Chitose that if she wanted his blood from now on, she should simply ask, adding that nothing would make him happier. Those kind words hit Chitose hard, and she all of a sudden pulled away and ran off while Suta called after her in confusion. Left alone and visibly shaken, Chitose stood in silence, drenched in embarrassment and unable to steady herself. The next day at school, Chitose looked exhausted and claimed she had overdone it yesterday and now had a headache, while someone noticed Suta looked unwell too. Remembering Jiruji's claim that the taste of blood never changed, Chitose questioned that idea and sensed that something in Suta's blood was different. Chitose wondered whether Suta's blood would taste different if she drank from him before any other vampire, especially before Jiruji. The next moment, she scolded herself for having those thoughts again so soon, just as a classmate called to her and bluntly asked whether she was a vampire. Chitose jolted in shock as the girl by the seat next to the door confidently declared that Chitose really was a vampire. The girl then revealed that she was also a vampire, leaving Chitose completely stunned. Nearby, Suta overheard the exchange and reacted in disbelief at the idea that there was another vampire. Chitose admitted she had been just as shocked when she all of a sudden heard that accusation in class. Suta guessed that Chitose's hypnosis might simply fail on some humans, and Chitose understood what he meant. As they stood talking openly in front of everyone, Chitose pointed out that Suta's hypnosis was letting them discuss vampire matters without drawing attention, though it apparently did not affect fellow vampires. A classmate interrupted by teasing Suta for flirting with the priest again and inviting him to baseball after school, while Chitose quickly said she had church work and could not join. Flustered, Suta denied the teasing and said he would contact his teacher, while his friend mockingly called him a fake priest. The other vampire said she wanted to see how Chitose handled things as a vampire and urged her to face it. Then the church bell rang outside, and the private talk all of a sudden felt much more serious. Suta asked if Chitose would really be okay meeting that vampire girl later with only Jiruji-san there. Chitose told him to leave it to her, insisting she was supposed to be a model vampire. She added that the girl had something she wanted to discuss, and the unease in the classroom only deepened. Suta started to argue that, as a priest, he should be involved too, but she shut that down at once. Chitose firmly declared that this was vampire girl talk, and that boys were absolutely not allowed. She kept pressing until Suta finally gave in and muttered that the whole thing was a pain. Then Suta all of a sudden froze, remembering one more problem. He asked if Chitose would be alright without drinking any blood that day, and she panicked before awkwardly insisting she would somehow manage. Still flustered, Chitose said she was going to meet the other vampire girl right away. Suta reluctantly agreed and told Chitose to ask whenever she needed blood, but added that he had to be fair because Jiruji-san was special too. Chitose winced at that phrasing and told him his version of fairness still stung. Even so, Chitose admitted she was happy he had started asking her directly, because what she really wanted was his blood. During the meeting, the vampire girl finally revealed what had been weighing on her and asked if someone else had already drunk Suta's blood. She introduced herself as Vampire Coco and nervously confessed that she was actually afraid of drinking human blood. Jiruji-san reacted in open shock and right away demanded to know why a vampire would feel that way. Chitose quickly told Jiruji-san not to scare Coco, while Coco shrank even smaller under the pressure. Chitose gently asked what Coco usually did instead, because going without blood entirely was impossible. Coco shyly explained that when she reached her limit, she only drank a tiny amount. As they waited, Jiruji-san remarked that vampires like Coco really did exist, and wondered what kind of priest cared for her, while Coco apologized for the wait and said she had ordered a royal milk tea. Then, Coco all of a sudden lit up and excitedly announced that the parfait had arrived. A staff member politely warned them not to drink beverages brought in from outside, and the group froze on the spot. Flustered, Jiruji-san apologized and insisted they had definitely ordered the parfait too. Chitose quickly stepped in to smooth things over, and Jiruji-san praised her for handling it so smoothly it almost felt like hypnosis. Chitose asked if Coco-san was fine with just the drink bar, and Coco explained that until transferring to this high school, she had lived like a shut-in in the countryside and never got used to human food, while Chitose said she understood because she had favorite drinks too. Jiruji-san cheerfully declared that parfaits were her favorite human food, and even called them liberating, but then shifted the mood by asking Coco what she was like when drinking blood. Coco panicked at being asked that in public, but Jiruji-san brushed it aside by saying hypnosis would keep anyone from noticing, while Chitose admitted that doing this in public still felt awkward. Embarrassed, Coco admitted she preferred feeding somewhere dark and hated being seen face to face, so she usually approached from behind. Coco then nervously explained that dealing with men felt too intimidating for her, and that humans unsettled her because they gave off such a strong presence. Jiruji-san said that for her, a frightened or troubled face was especially hard to ignore, and Koko shyly agreed. Jiruji-san got carried away by her own imagination and admitted that even thinking about it made the whole situation feel intense. In Chitose's mind, the image spun out of control, and she was left shaken as she pictured Jiruji-san closing in on Suta. Chitose flushed hard and fought desperately to stay composed, while Jiruji-san noticed and called out to her in concern. Jiruji-san then asked Chitose what kind of preference she had, and Chitose hurriedly insisted she was normal. Chitose admitted to herself that she could not answer, because she had been trying not to think about it at all. As Koko focused on the dessert, she quietly realized it looked dangerously tempting, and Chitose sensed the danger right away. Chitose fought the urge down and realized she was practically about to lose her composure. Her thoughts jumped to Suta, and she wondered how it would feel after Koko-san had taken blood from him. Before Chitose could sink any deeper into that thought, Jiruji-san casually asked whether she wanted to try taking Suta's blood. Koko was startled by the sudden suggestion and instantly panicked at the idea. Chitose flusteredly explained that Suta was kind and already used to this world, so she had wondered whether even Koko-san might be able to manage with him. Koko added that she had been trying to be considerate by keeping Suta's feeding out of Chitose's sight, then nervously asked if that would be alright. Chitose right away apologized for making things weird, but even so, admitted that she wanted to try it. Blushing deeply, Chitose said that if Suta was willing to be kind, then she truly wanted to try relying on him. The moment she said it aloud, Chitose abruptly declared that she would go ask Suta herself. A moment later, Chitose rushed back and confessed that she had actually done it. Then she collapsed into dramatic self-reproach, admitting that curiosity had won and calling herself a weak vampire and a failure as a childhood friend. From above the stairs, Koko quietly pointed out that it had looked like Chitose wanted her to take Suta's blood. Hearing that, Chitose froze and began to wonder if that was really how she had looked. From the stairs, Koko bluntly asked if Chitose wanted Suta involved even after another vampire had already gone first. Chitose went rigid in shock, then right away insisted Koko had the wrong idea. Koko teasingly called Chitose weird, and Chitose burst into embarrassed outrage. The scene shifted to morning, where fish crackled on the grill as Suta picked up on the tension. Chitose stared at the grill with a red face and insisted she wanted Koko to eat the fish at its most delicious moment, while Koko observed that Chitose might be taking this too far. As the meal was served, everyone gave thanks, but the awkwardness still clung to the room. Koko then showed a photo of another vampire from Class 2 and explained that this was the girl she had mentioned before. Chitose instantly denied thinking the girl was cute, even as Koko lightly pointed out that she really was. Chitose nervously asked Suta if he would be okay with that girl trying to drink his blood, especially if she seemed clumsy at it, and Suta said he would accept it. When Chitose worried whether the church and the priest caring for that vampire would object, Suta reasoned that it would probably be fine, though he still had not heard back from his teacher and reminded them that he was only a priest in training. Suta apologized for bringing it up without asking Chitose first, accepted it because she was the one asking, and Chitose, flustered, admitted she still had one more favor to request. Chitose moved in close to Suta and quietly pressed that request, leaving him tense and overwhelmed by how sudden it was. With Chitose right beside him, Suta nervously said her name, and she asked if it would be alright since she had not had his blood that day. The moment shattered when Jiruji appeared, and both Suta and Chitose jolted at being seen. Later, Chitose reflected that Jiruji had learned everything the day before, and the memory instantly sent embarrassment rushing back. As Chitose trailed behind her, she worried this was the worst possible way for another vampire to find out she wanted Suta's blood after someone else had already taken from him. On the walk outside, Chitose panicked over the thought that Jiruji might tell Suta and expose her feelings. Chitose hurriedly brought up what had happened yesterday and begged Jiruji not to tell Suta. Jiruji burst into flustered frustration and insisted she could never say something that embarrassing to anyone. Even so, Jiruji teasingly remarked that Chitose, who acted like a model vampire, was unexpectedly interested in something like that. Chitose awkwardly tried to explain that Suta's blood simply seemed different after another vampire had already taken from him, while Jiruji wondered if that strange reaction came from the stress of adjusting to human society. Chitose nervously asked Jiruji whether she had ever felt that way too. Jiruji all of a sudden flared up, denied it outright, and angrily pushed back against the suggestion, calling Chitose shameless for even asking. Startled by the outburst, Chitose wondered if Jiruji thought she was the shameless one. Flushed and sweating, Chitose timidly checked whether Jiruji had actually meant her. Jiruji panicked and denied it, then confessed that she was only scared because she was a vampire who was still afraid of drinking blood. After calming down, Jiruji asked Chitose how things had gone with Suta and whether he had agreed to let her drink his blood. Chitose confirmed that Suta had said yes, leaving Jiruji visibly stunned. Jiruji thanked Chitose and admitted that she was still afraid of Suta since she had only just met him, though Chitose's recommendation helped calm her. Trying to stay composed, Chitose said she was looking forward to the day Jiruji finally drank Suta's blood too. Jiruji leaned in and warned Koko not to trust Chitose so easily, catching both girls off guard. As Koko hesitated, Jiruji pointed out that it was strange for someone to hand her source over to others, and Koko quietly admitted she had a point. Chitose quickly defended herself and insisted she was only helping someone in trouble. Koko answered honestly that, between the two of them, Jiruji was the one she found harder to trust, leaving Jiruji stunned. Koko explained that Chitose seemed more proper and dependable, while Jiruji came across as flashy and intimidating. Jiruji loudly protested that Koko had simply been fooled by Chitose's model student image, while Chitose angrily argued that she was still a diligent vampire despite everything. Embarrassed by the heated exchange, Koko all of a sudden excused herself and hurried off to the bathroom. After Koko left, Jiruji remarked that it happened because Chitose had yelled at her. Jiruji then stopped Chitose and said there was something she wanted to ask again. Facing Chitose directly, Jiruji asked whether she liked Santa-kun. Chitose flushed hard, fought through her embarrassment, and admitted that she did. Jiruji right away noticed that this answer was different from before, leaving Chitose flustered. Chitose explained that back then, she still had not understood her own feelings. Jiruji studied her reaction and concluded that Chitose really did like Santa that much, which only made Chitose burn hotter. Jiruji then pointed out the contradiction and accused Chitose of being twisted for still wanting other vampires involved with him. Even while blushing, Jiruji insisted that if Chitose liked him, she should value him properly. Chitose confessed that whenever she saw someone getting close to Santa, a painful jealousy rose inside her and refused to fade. Hearing that, Jiruji urged her to say it clearly, and Chitose admitted that she liked Santa. Chitose continued by saying that despite those feelings, she still wanted to know how things changed after someone else had already taken blood from him. She clarified that what she wanted was his blood after another vampire had already taken from him. Jiruji warned that if Chitose kept talking like that, she might truly lose Santa, and Chitose shut that down instantly. Chitose insisted she could share his blood because it somehow felt different that way, but giving Santa himself away was never happening. Read to the tips of her ears, Chitose declared that Santa, and even his blood, belonged to her alone. In that moment, Jiruji realized Chitose meant every single word. Chitose nervously wondered if Santa-kun had already noticed her feelings, then tried to calm herself by thinking that even after 16 years, he probably still had not. She admitted that she and Santa were close, but she also knew he was gentle with everyone. With a proud blush, Chitose called what they had a warm, familiar kind of bond, even as something inside her kept asking why that made her so happy. Then Santa's call all of a sudden reached her, and Chitose answered in surprise, asking why he was calling while she was still in the classroom. Santa told her Koko was there too and had just returned from the bathroom. At that, Chitose went still as Santa urgently warned her to be careful around Koko. Santa said he had checked with his teacher because something about it felt off, and Chitose froze on the spot. He explained that there was no church in town besides theirs, so another church-affiliated vampire should not have existed there. Then he added that church headquarters had never heard of any vampire named Koko, and Chitose's shock only deepened. As Santa said he was heading over right away and told her to stay alert, Jiruji quietly began wondering who Koko really was. When Chitose asked what Jiruji was always drinking, Jiruji casually revealed that it was a blood pack. She explained that the church provided blood whenever it was requested, and Chitose was left stunned. Hearing that, Chitose could only recoil and ask what kind of church this really was. Still unable to process it, Chitose asked whose blood Jiruji drank if it did not come directly from people. Jiruji calmly answered that she simply hypnotized nearby people and asked them for it, and Chitose's mind went blank. Chitose stared at her in disbelief, wondering if vampires really operated this differently, before desperately refusing to believe it could be normal. Chitose snapped that Koko was not anyone's captive, then condemned the idea that vampires were still feeding on ordinary people in this day and age. Anxiously, she revealed that Koko was a wild vampire who had never been taken in by the church, and the others could only stare. Chitose panicked and wondered if she had said too much, then tearfully insisted that she was the frightening one here. Later, someone asked about Koko's condition, and the answer came that she had calmed down for now. Even while restrained, Chitose said she intended to let Koko drink Santa's blood afterward, though she was still deeply worried about what would happen to the stray vampire. Jiruji lightly remarked that holy blood really did bind vampires tightly, then bluntly concluded that Koko would end up drinking Santa-kun's blood just as Chitose had planned, which made Chitose burn with embarrassment. Then Jiruji casually mentioned that Santa-kun was apparently being taken away from Chitose, and Chitose jolted in disbelief as she demanded an explanation. Jiruji argued that no priest should be forced to deal with 3 vampires, then said that to be fair, Koko should replace the overly proper Chitose and pressed her on whether she hated that idea. Chitose faltered while trying to explain what Santa meant to her, clearly unable to think of him as just another priest. Seeing that, Jiruji pointed out that Chitose would still need to drink a priest's blood at least once, forcing her to face what that meant. Jiruji asked whether Santa and Chitose lived together, then pressed him to say if he had any problem with that. She looked at him in disbelief and asked why a human and a vampire were so unusually close. Jiruji then directly asked whether there was something special between Santa and Chitose, leaving him with no answer. Elsewhere, someone remarked that the class representative was definitely cute, turning the conversation toward Chitose. Jiruji openly admitted she was jealous of Santa and said Chitose seemed approachable, serious, kind, and unexpectedly impressive, making that envy impossible to hide. She then wondered how Santa could stay so normal around such a cute childhood friend, while he awkwardly claimed Chitose probably felt more like family by now. Jiruji instantly seized on that answer and repeated the family part with a knowing smile, tightening the pressure on Santa. Santa quickly clarified that childhood friend was more accurate, explaining that he and Chitose had grown up together at the church. As he looked back on the past, Santa admitted that Chitose had always felt older and more mature than he was. In that memory, Chitose warned him once again that staying near her was dangerous because humans died easily, showing how seriously she had always viewed the distance between them. Santa remembered that when he first arrived, Chitose was already alone in the church and insisted she would be fine by herself. Even so, he could not help being drawn toward Chitose as she sat isolated on the rooftop. When her robe slipped out of place, Santa bluntly warned Chitose about it, catching her completely off guard. Chitose teased him for acting bold despite having no experience, and his flustered denial only deepened his embarrassment. When Santa asked why she was always on the roof, Chitose explained that she only looked outside because she was not allowed beyond the church grounds. Chitose then asked what school was like for him, but Santa admitted that he did not enjoy it at all. Curious, Chitose listened as Santa described school as studying history, technology, and the lives of young people, and to her it sounded exciting. Santa right away shut that down, saying it was not fun at all because children without parents were only looked at strangely. He reflected that the church had been full of people back then, and most of them were probably there to watch over Chitose. Still, to an orphan like Santa, that crowded church had felt warm and full of life, even while Chitose kept refusing to drink blood. Santa overheard that Chitose was one of their strongest assets, but holy blood weakened vampires, so the adults said they needed to move quickly while another voice urged caution. A priest casually argued that Chitose did not seem like the type to run away and said they should leave her alone, while someone else criticized his usual carelessness. Far from them, Chitose laughed to herself on the church roof, sounding amused and irritated all at once. Santa found Chitose on the rooftop in restraints, and the sight of those chains made him realize she was being treated as a high-ranking vampire. Chitose noticed Santa again, and he right away warned her not to lean against the cross, bluntly reminding her that she was still a vampire. His sharp reaction made Chitose tense with embarrassment as she adjusted herself and tried to recover her composure. Santa then asked whether, as a vampire, she truly wanted to leave the church, and the sudden question caught Chitose off guard. He reasoned that she kept refusing blood because taking in holy blood would weaken her and make escape impossible, and Chitose was stunned that he had figured it out. After understanding her situation, Santa simply told Chitose to drink his blood instead, offering himself as her way out. Chitose stared at him in shock as Santa awkwardly explained that he was not a priest anyway, so drinking from him should be fine. Santa admitted he was grateful the church had taken him in, but he also complained that becoming a priest sounded miserable, and Chitose could not help being amused by his honesty. Flustered but resolute, Santa hesitantly asked whether Chitose wanted to drink his blood, and she laughed at how reckless the offer was. Chitose moved in close and said he was making a dangerously reckless offer, and that unsettling confidence left Santa frozen with nervous shock. When Santa panicked as she approached, Chitose playfully asked whether he had only scared himself with his own imagination, which only embarrassed him more. Then, to his shock, Chitose casually broke part of her restraint, proving she had far more freedom than he had believed. She explained that escaping would actually be easy, but dealing with the priests afterward would be too troublesome, leaving Santa speechless. Chitose then told him to stop calling her a vampire so formally, and asked him to use her name, while hinting that blood was not the only thing she wanted from him. She stepped in too close, and the sudden closeness overwhelmed Santa completely. With a smug smile, Chitose revealed that even simple warmth eased things for her, so she chose a brief reassuring gesture instead, since blood from him alone would not be enough. Still reeling, Santa realized that had been an overwhelming first for him, and the shock locked him in place. Santa nervously called out to Chitose, and she turned to him in mild confusion as he struggled to say what was on his mind. Blushing furiously, Santa awkwardly suggested that if he became a priest, he might even marry Chitose. Chitose burst into stunned disbelief, completely thrown by the proposal-like remark. Flustered beyond reason, Chitose argued that humans did not marry vampires, then panicked that she would not make a good wife, and even blurted out that she could not cook. Both of them fell into embarrassed silence, overwhelmed by how far the moment had gone. After that, Chitose began trying to adapt to human society, hoping that if Santa became a priest and stayed by her side forever, she might one day walk outside freely too. In time, Chitose was granted permission to go out without needing marriage at all, and Santa quietly realized she probably did not even remember the childish promise that had once driven her. Later at home, Chitose shyly called out to Santa, and he turned toward her while another woman in the room watched. With a flushed and conflicted face, Chitose admitted that she still could not bring herself to drink Santa's blood. Then someone called out about Santa's assigned vampire, pulling attention back to Chitose's situation. The dark-haired girl bluntly asked Santa if he was in love with Chitose, and Chitose froze in the doorway the instant she heard it. Santa went speechless from the shock, while the girl, red-faced and sweating, pushed him to admit whether it was true. Flustered and staring straight at him, Chitose hesitantly asked Santa if he really liked her. As Chitose and Santa stood awkwardly together at the back, the dark-haired girl nervously tried to ask what everyone was already thinking. Embarrassed, but determined, the dark-haired girl asked whether the two of them were dating. Chitose quickly denied it with a strange smile, while Santa stood beside her just as flustered and equally unable to look calm. The girl then asked Santa directly if he liked Chitose, and his shaken expression revealed more than words ever could. While Chitose wondered what he would have said if he had answered, the dark-haired girl all of a sudden announced that they should begin. The interaction becomes difficult to navigate. She took Santa's hand to steady herself, leaning on that contact as unease spread through the room. Standing close to Santa, Chitose became overwhelmed and admitted to herself that she could not stop thinking about it, even with someone watching from the doorway. Flushed and shaken, Chitose kept wondering what Santa truly thought of her, and the possibility that he might return her feelings hit all at once. That thought struck so hard that Chitose faltered and insisted to herself that she still could not face it. Watching Santa from only a short distance away, Chitose realized she could not stop thinking about the taste of his blood right then. As she hesitated with a small bite of food in hand, Chitose weighed Santa's blood against Santa's feelings and only grew more conflicted. Trying to escape those thoughts by helping in the kitchen, Chitose was interrupted when someone cheerfully called out to ask if dinner was not ready yet. Chitose snapped back in embarrassment and warned that bothering her would only slow things down, while the other girl teased that cooking was just practice and should still be manageable. Then, the girl saw straight through her and bluntly said Chitose was curious about how Santa's blood tasted after Coco had bitten him. Chitose weakly denied it, but the girl right away called the bluff. As Chitose stood there blushing in silence, the girl pointed out that she was really wondering whether Santa liked her, while also fixating on how his blood might taste after someone else bit him. The girl bluntly called Chitose a total weirdo, and the jab only made her face burn hotter. Red-faced and trapped, Chitose snapped that if she already knew, she should stop saying it out loud. Then the others noticed the commotion and asked what was so strange, and Chitose jolted as every eye started turning her way. Another girl cheerfully asked whether Santa felt alright after Coco bit him, and he said he felt the same as always. The situation reaches a point neither of them expected. The teasing only got louder as someone pushed Santa to admit what it had really been like and whether he had been more nervous than with the others. Chitose, tight with nerves and unable to hide it anymore, admitted she wanted to know too and awkwardly asked how it had felt. The questions kept piling up about what it had been like and how Coco was doing, until Chitose finally snapped and told them to leave if they were only there to be a nuisance. Later that night at the church, Chitose remembered she had been told she could come by any time. Just as dinner was said to be nearly ready, Santa said he would come soon after finishing his report, when a call reached him and someone asked for Santa. Chitose stepped inside and realized Santa was alone, and the air between them tightened at once. She remembered Santa had been about to say something earlier and decided this was the moment to ask him. When she asked whether he was busy, Santa explained that he still had to send a full report on Coco to headquarters and grumbled about the endless paperwork. Trying to help in her own clumsy way, Chitose asked whether he wanted blood or something, but Santa quickly said that was not what he meant. Santa apologized and said he needed to focus on the report for now, asking Chitose to go ahead without him. Taking those words at face value, Chitose moved in close and repeated that he wanted to concentrate, leaving Santa rattled by how boldly she was acting. As she crowded into his space, Chitose reminded Santa that he had interrupted her while she was cooking, and panic hit him as he realized what this was really about. Blushing with jealousy, Chitose complained that while she had been working hard on a feast, he had been getting close to someone else, and Santa hurriedly apologized. Still unable to let it go, Chitose demanded to know what it had really felt like when Coco bit him, but Santa kept insisting it was no different than usual. Desperate to get back to his work, Santa begged Chitose to let him finish the report first and promised to make it up to her later, which only made everything more awkward. Chitose told Santa to keep working because she would just take some blood herself, and he froze the instant she said his name. She moved in and drank from him while Santa sat rigid at his desk, trying to keep writing as the situation became harder to ignore. When his hand finally stopped writing, Chitose noticed at once and quietly asked what was wrong. Santa blurted out that she had to be messing with him, shaken by how far Chitose was willing to go. Then Chitose caught a scent on him she did not recognize and realized it had to be Coco's, and her face instantly hardened with jealousy. The moment she understood that, Chitose lost the last of her restraint and admitted to herself that she could not stop. Still refusing to back off, Chitose asked Santa whether this was really all right, while pointing out that he had already stopped working on the report. Santa weakly tried to stop her, but Chitose pressed him down over the desk and held him there without a word. Santa looked back in confusion while Chitose stayed close behind him, still breathing unevenly with jealousy she had not gotten past. The spell broke when Santa remembered a guest was supposed to arrive, and both of them abruptly came back to themselves. Santa explained that there were now too many vampires for him to manage alone, so he had called another priest to help. Chitose was shaken when she realized that if things were assigned by the rules, Coco would take her place as Santa's student partner. The new priest introduced himself as Ryusei and said Santa had asked him to come help. Santa told Ryusei to stop calling him that, but Ryusei casually said it suited him as the senior, then added that the rise in vampire cases had been rough before warmly greeting Chitose. Flustered, Chitose awkwardly said she was looking forward to working with him. As Chitose and Ryusei began getting along, Santa quickly clarified that Ryusei would be the one handling Coco. The instant Santa said that, something in Chitose snapped, and she refused to give up being Santa's partner. Hearing that, the woman nearby right away realized Santa and Chitose still were not dating and reacted with visible relief. Coco, already emotional, locked onto the fact that Santa was apparently meant to handle her. Then someone bluntly told Coco and Ryusei they should just leave the village, catching Coco completely off guard. Coco remembered hearing that the village was now mostly elderly people, and the interaction takes a turn neither of them expected. She was urged to find a new place outside the village, and the words left her tense and unsettled. Even so, Coco decided she needed a friend and quietly wondered whether her grandpa was watching over her. When she entered the room, and the situation becomes awkward. That relief shattered the moment she learned the party was not for her at all. The others explained that the celebration was for Ryusei's promotion to priest apprentice, and the situation shifts into territory no one prepared for. Ryusei tried to force her to face reality by reminding her that she had attacked ordinary people and drunk their blood, even if she had not understood how serious it was. He stated that she was still someone under strict surveillance, and Coco froze in humiliation. When the tension sharpened too far, Ryusei softened while Alicia tried to shift the mood by asking Coco if she wanted something to eat. Panicking, Coco quickly offered the steak she had brought as a souvenir because Alicia liked it, but still blurted out that she did not want things treated like that. Coco looked at the man assigned to watch over her and instantly doubted him, bluntly deciding he did not even seem like someone with good blood. As she looked around the church, Coco grew more uneasy and wondered why the place was full of painfully cheerful extroverts. Watching everyone in silence, Coco anxiously questioned whether she could really survive in a place like this. Someone offered Coco a drink to cheer her up, but she stayed stiff and clearly did not trust it. After drinking it, Coco all of a sudden grew lightheaded, and another girl cheerfully revealed that she had just been given aged blood. The moment takes an uncomfortable turn. Holding her aching head, Coco noticed a congratulatory banner and tensed as she realized something had happened while she was unconscious. Still disoriented, Coco asked Alicia where everyone had gone, trying to make sense of the strange scene around her. Alicia recoiled in panic, called Coco a demon, and clutched her cross as fear took over completely. Back on the sofa, Coco sat up and heard someone casually remark that she was finally awake, which only left her more on edge. The blonde girl grinned smugly as she teased the situation, while Ryusei stood behind her already sweating over how badly everything had gone. She told Coco that she had been completely overwhelmed by a blood frenzy, and Coco was stunned by how directly she said it. The others explained that Coco had swallowed the aged blood, collapsed on the spot, and then all of a sudden jumped back up without warning. During the chaos, Ryusei got caught in the panic and recoiled in shock as Coco lunged around in a dazed frenzy. They added that Coco had looked less like a proper vampire and more like a zombie, and everyone had started screaming. From above, the group admitted that poor Ryusei-kun had even passed out from anemia, while another girl felt ashamed that she had trained for this and still failed. Akano Aikawa cut in incredulously and demanded a break, questioning how someone who claimed to fear drinking blood had caused this much chaos. Flustered and cornered, Akino accused Coco of drinking more than anyone else there and called her the worst kind of blood-crazed nuisance. Ryusei rubbed his head and admitted he had not realized he was that weak, while the blonde girl praised Santa Aniki as amazing and Akino could only stammer. The blonde girl casually explained that Santa Aniki always dealt with both Chitose Nisan and Jilsan, and Akino glared as if that insane standard only made this worse. Coco grew embarrassed and quietly decided she might need to train her strength more. When she approached Ryusei again, he instinctively pulled away, and Coco noticed the distance right away. Coco sadly realized he felt farther away now, even though they had seemed much closer only moments before, while Ryusei awkwardly searched for words. Ryusei nervously explained that the incident had left him shy and shaken, and said that kind of reaction was normal after something like that. Coco stared at him in surprise, then teasingly pointed out that he was actually weak under pressure. When Coco grabbed him again, Ryusei was startled by how strong her grip was, and someone watching concluded that this girl might become another problem. Coco admitted she had never known drinking too much could affect her that badly, and reflected that she usually held back because she rarely drank that much. One of the girls reminded her that she had gone completely wild and attacked both of them from behind, leaving Coco stunned that there had been 2 victims. Horrified, Coco asked if she had gone after Santa too, and the others confirmed that they already told her she had. As Coco tried to ask what had happened to Chitose-san and the others, she was told to save the apology for later because they were probably resting in their rooms. A few days later, Coco reflected that she had first seen Ryusei as pushy and overwhelming. But after that incident, she noticed Ryusei had become surprisingly meek, and she quietly admitted that his blood had tasted great. Coco credited Chitose for that change and nervously said it was good to hear, even though she still did not understand everything, before trying to continue. Chitose all of a sudden bowed her head and apologized so intensely that Coco was completely caught off guard. Chitose explained that she had never meant to come between Coco and Ryusei, and confessed that she had simply lost control after drinking too much of Santa-san's blood. Flustered and ashamed, Chitose admitted she did not even know what kind of apology could possibly be enough. Coco quickly told her not to worry and warmly insisted that they were friends. As Coco cheerfully saw her off and said she could come back anytime, Chitose froze and realized everything seemed to be unfolding exactly as planned. A blonde girl then bluntly asked whether giving Coco aged blood had been intentional too. Chitose explained that Coco had not been that serious at first, because back then she had only taken a tiny amount of Santa's blood. But that answer only opened a darker question hanging over the room. No one said it outright, yet the pressure only kept building. The scene moved forward under a silence that felt ready to crack. The tension refused to break, as if something worse was still coming. The moment held its weight with no clean release. The room stayed trapped in an uneasy stillness that no one could dispel. The exchange left both of them visibly unsettled, with too much left unsaid. The silence between them grew heavier until it felt impossible to ignore. The tension stayed unresolved, and the pressure kept climbing without mercy. The weight of the moment lingered, as if the real fallout had not even begun. A girl all of a sudden poured out her feelings to Santa, making a desperate confession and asking him to go out with her. The girls watching froze in shock, and one of them nervously admitted that none of them had ever been prepared for a human girl doing something like this.